This podcast is brought to you by B2B Better. Most B2B podcasts rack up downloads, but they never move the needle on pipeline. At B2B Better, we build own media systems that sales teams actually use to close deals. We've helped companies turn their podcasts into revenue engines, shortening sales cycles, improving outbound reply rates, and directly influencing millions in pipeline. So if you're tired of content that looks good on paper, but doesn't drive business results, visit b2b-better.com to see how we do it differently. So B2B Better is my first foray not only into running my own business, but also into working in an agency. For 15 years of my career in B2B marketing, I was always in-house. I was the client, the person on the other side of the table. And in those 15 years, I worked with a lot of different agencies, creative agencies, digital agencies, PR agencies, content agencies, and even podcast production shops. And 9 times out of 10, I was greeted with the same message. Yeah, we can solve that problem. It doesn't matter what my problems were. It didn't matter what my company did or what stage we were at or what we were trying to achieve. The answer was always the same. We need help with demand generation. We can do that. We need a rebrand. We can do that. We need a podcast. We can do that. They were generalists. They were jack of all trades, masters of none. And it never sat right with me because ultimately, if you can say you are a bit of everything for everyone, you're actually nothing for nobody. So when I set out to build B2B Better, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. We were going to be specialists. We were going to niche down hard. And today I want to walk you through how we did it, why it worked, what it cost us, and how you can apply the same thinking to your own business or your own podcast. Here we go. When I started thinking about how to position B2B Better, I realized that we needed to be specific on 2 levels. The industry that we were targeting and the service that we were offering both needed to be narrow. One wasn't enough. I always knew we were going to be in B2B, and that's why we called the agency, drumroll please, B2B Better. But B2B isn't niche in of itself. It's a hemisphere. B2B includes SaaS, manufacturing, professional services, logistics, fintech, health tech, martech, hundreds of different categories, thousands of subcategories. If I said we're a B2B marketing agency, I'd be competing with 5,000 other agencies that say the exact same thing. So I went one layer deeper. The more consultancy I did, the more prospects I spoke to, the clearer it became. We were carving out a niche in B2B services, not product companies, not SaaS with self-serve models, not e-commerce, service-based businesses, professional services, managed services, technical services, companies like consulting firms, agencies, system integrators, compliance specialists, cloud implementation partners, and engineering consultancies. Why these companies? Because they have a specific structural reality. They're selling expertise, not products. They're selling people, not software. They're selling trust and relationships, not features and pricing. And that's what lends itself beautifully to our other niche, podcasts. We don't do marketing. We don't do content strategy. We don't do brand positioning. We do video-first podcasts designed to turn your point of view into pipeline. That's it. That's the entire service offering. And that lends itself beautifully to what has been our primary niche up until now, podcasts. We don't do generalist marketing. We don't do fluffy content strategies. We don't do brand positioning or SEO projects or build websites. Up until 2026, we have focused exclusively on building video-first podcasts designed to turn your point of view into pipeline. That's been it. That's the entire service offering. Why? Well, because if you're a service-based business, you are fundamentally a commodity. Your competitors offer similar services. Your pricing is probably within 20% of each other. Your case studies are probably the same. The only real differentiators that you have are your people and your point of view. Who are the experts on the team? What do they believe that your competitors do not? How do they think about the problem differently? That's what buyers of our customers are evaluating, not your service description, your perspective. And a podcast, we found, is one of the best mechanisms to systematically capture, package, and distribute that perspective in a way that actually drives commercial outcomes. So our niche became crystal clear. Up until now, we've been a B2B podcast marketing agency for service-based businesses that need to turn their people and their point of view into pipeline. It's specific, it's narrow, and it's defensible. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. The same niching principle that works for agencies works for podcasts. When a client comes to us and says, we want to launch a show, the first question I ask is, What's your superpower? Most people have no idea what I'm talking about. Your and superpower is a sentence that explains what your podcast is and what makes it different. Here's the formula to think about. This is a podcast about topic X. And unlike other podcasts about topic X, only we do Y. Most B2B podcasts fail this test. They say, we're a podcast about technology, or we're a podcast about leadership. We're a podcast about AI. Okay, so are thousands of others. There's no and, there's no differentiation, there's no reason for anyone to choose you over the alternatives. But when you add the and, your superpower, everything changes. Here's a real example from our portfolio. So this is a podcast about data science, and unlike other podcasts about data science, only we explore the topic through the lens of biotechnology manufacturing. That's a real podcast that we produce called Data and Biotech. Suddenly, if you're a data scientist working in biotech, there's only one show for you. Not 10,000, one. That's the power of the and. Another example. This is a podcast about B2B marketing. And unlike other podcasts about B2B marketing, only we focus on turning owned media into actual pipeline for service-based businesses. That's Pipedream. That's this podcast. If you're a VP of marketing at a consulting firm trying to figure out how to make content actually drive revenue, there aren't 50 shows for you. There's this one. The and is your niche. The and is your superpower. The and is what makes you worth paying attention to. Let me give you some results of getting this specific. Data and Biotech is one of the most successful shows in our portfolio. Now, when I say successful, I don't mean it has the most downloads. It doesn't. We have shows that get 5 times the audience size. But Data and Biotech has something more valuable: resonance. The average listener completes 75 to 80% of each episode. That's not normal. Most podcasts see 40 to 50% completion rates if they're lucky. So why the difference? Because every single person who listens to Data and Biotech is exactly the right person. They're data scientists, they're ML engineers, and they're analytics leaders working specifically in biotech. The show is so targeted, it's so specific, that when someone finds it, they have no choice but to binge it, because there's nowhere else they can get this exact combination of content. That specificity creates commercial value. The show's LinkedIn posts get 3 times the engagement of our more general shows because the audience is so aligned. Guests are easier to book because they immediately understand the value. That's what happens when you niche properly. You trade reach for resonance. And in B2B, resonance is what drives results. Given the choice, I'd rather have a smaller, deeply engaged audience than a large, loosely interested one. Because the deeply engaged audience buys, the loosely interested audience scrolls past. Now let me address the fear, because everyone feels this when they think about niching down. If I get too specific, I'll leave opportunity on the table. What if someone who doesn't fit my niche wants to work with me? What if I'm limiting my addressable market? I felt this too, especially in the early days. Someone would reach out, a SaaS company who loved what we did, and I'd think, they want to give me money. How can I say no? But here's what I learned. Saying yes to everyone is how you become nothing for nobody. Every time you say yes to a client outside your niche, you're diluting your positioning, you're reducing your expertise, you're creating operational inefficiencies, and you're confusing your market. The short-term revenue feels good, no lie. The long-term cost can be devastating. Because here's what actually happens when you niche properly. Initially, your funnel gets narrower. Fewer people are raising their hand, and that feels scary. But the people who do raise their hand, they are the perfect fits. They convert faster, they pay more, they stay longer, they refer others in the same niche. And over time, your reputation in that niche compounds. You become known as the specialist, the go-to, the obvious choice. Instead of competing on price with 100 generalists, you're competing on expertise with maybe 5 other specialists. And you win because you've got the deepest bench, the most case studies, the most refined process. Your pricing power goes up. Your close rates go up. Your referrals go up. All because you said no to the wrong opportunities so you could say hell yes to the right ones. Here's the truth. If you're worried about leaving money on the table by niching down, you're probably not charging enough for your core service. Because if your positioning is strong and your niche is valuable, the economics work without needing to serve everyone. So how do you actually choose your niche? Here's the framework that I use. First, look at your best work, not your biggest clients, your best clients, the ones where the work was energizing, the results were exceptional, they referred others, and if you could, you'd clone them. What do those clients have in common? For us, the pattern was pretty obvious. Service-based B2B companies with complex sales cycles. That's our starting signal. Second, you need to validate the economics. A niche only works if the economics support a sustainable business. Are there enough companies in this niche? How can they afford our service? Do they have a problem that we can solve? Are they reachable? For us, B2B companies with complex sales cycles meant thousands of companies, high lifetime value, clear pain points, and they were reachable through LinkedIn and industry groups. The economics checked out. Third, you have to test your thesis. Don't announce your niche on day one. Create content for that niche and see if they engage. Reach out to prospects in that niche and see if they resonate. Do a few projects and see if the fit is as good as you think. We spent 12 months working with different types of B2B companies before we committed to service-based businesses as our core. That testing period was essential. Fourth, you have to commit and you have to communicate. Once you're confident, commit publicly to your niche. Change your website, change your LinkedIn, change your pitch deck. Say, this is who we serve and this is who we don't. That clarity will feel uncomfortable. You have to embrace it because the discomfort of niching is temporary. The benefits compound forever. The thing that most people miss about niching down is that it compounds over time. Year one, being specific, it feels limiting. Year three, being specific, feels like leverage. And then when you get to year five, being specific feels like a moat. Your expertise compounds because every client you serve in your niche makes you better at serving that niche. You learn the nuances, the language, the objections, the buying patterns. Generalists reset to zero with every new client in a new industry. Specialists compound their learning. Their credibility compounds because every case study, every testimonial, every guest on your podcast reinforces your positioning. Your referrals compound because niche markets are networks. When you do great work for one company in your niche, they talk to their peers. Those peers call you. You stop needing outbound. Inbound finds you. And your pricing power compounds because as you become the recognized specialist, you stop competing on price. You're not comparing yourself to generalists. You are the category leader. That means that you can charge more and still win. All of this takes time. That's why early stage founders abandon niching down. They don't see the immediate results and they panic. But if you can stick with it, if you can resist the temptation to say yes to everything, the compounding is undeniable. I want to end this episode with this principle because it applies to everything we've talked about, resonance over reach. Most people optimize for reach. How can we get in front of more people, more followers, more downloads, more traffic, more logos on the client list? But reach without resonance is noise. I'd rather have, as I've already said, 1,000 listeners who consume every piece of content I put out than 100,000 who skip after 2 minutes. 20 clients in our sweet spot than 100 clients we kind of serve. One perfect case study over 10 mediocre ones, because resonance is what drives commercial outcomes. The deeply engaged audience, they buy. The perfectly aligned clients get results and then they refer others. The case study that's spot on attracts more of the same. Reach is a vanity metric. Resonance, that is a revenue metric. And you get resonance by being specific, by niching down, by saying no to things so you can say yes to the right things. That's what we've learned building B2B Better, and that's what I'd recommend you do. Whether you're building an agency, launching a podcast, or positioning any kind of content in a crowded market, get specific, stay specific, and let it compound. This is what direct, systematic, and results-driven actually looks like in practice. Direct, we tell clients up front, if you're not a service-based B2B company with a complex sales cycle, we're probably not the right fit. It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. Systematic, we've built repeatable processes specifically for our niche. Our onboarding, our frameworks, our guest booking strategy, they are all optimized for service-based businesses because that only works because we're not trying to serve everyone. And finally, results-driven, we measure outcomes that matter to service-based businesses. Influence pipeline, guest bookings with enterprise clients, sales enablement usage, not generic download numbers. Our niche isn't a constraint. It's the foundation of literally everything that we do. And that's why we're an owned media agency and a full funnel revenue system builder. It's not that we do marketing or we make podcasts anymore. We turn your people and your point of view into pipeline. And we do that for service-based B2B companies. That's it. That specificity is the strategy. So here's what I want you to do. If you're building an agency or a consultancy or any kind of service-based business, write down your "and" statement. We help a specific type of company with specific problems by specific approaches. And be brutally honest. Are you actually specific or are you hedging? If you're launching a podcast, write your "and" superpower. This is a podcast about topic. And unlike other podcasts about topic, only we have a unique angle. If you can't fill in that second part convincingly, you're not niche enough yet. And then finally ask yourself, who are my 10 dream clients or my 100 dream listeners? Can you name them specifically? Do they have something in common? If yes, that's your niche and double down. If no, keep testing until the pattern emerges. On a future episode, I'm going to be breaking down the exact onboarding system that we use to go from signed contract to published episode in 3 weeks, because most agencies waste months on getting to know you and we don't. I'll show you why that's better for everyone. I'm Jason, this is Pipe Dream. Stop renting attention and start owning it, and I'll see you next time.